Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's Board of Appeals hearing. Before we begin, left is John Zolo, the town attorney. To his left is David Flynn, assistant planning director. To his left is Blaise Donadio, a planner in the planning department. Now let me tell you why you're here tonight. New York State statute requires that any town that adopts zoning must also have a Board of Appeals to act as a relief valve so that those persons agreed by strict application of the zoning ordinance can seek relief without the expense of going to court. Town board can give Board of Appeals additional powers such as special exception approvals, site plan approvals, etc. In Smithtown, the town board has given this board authority regarding certificate of existing use and some special exception uses. The most common kind of application before the board are area variances. Area variances deal with dimensions such as lot area, frontage, height, setbacks, and parking spaces. New York State statute mandates that the board must consider the following five criteria for area variances. When you come to the podium to present your application, you need to address these 5 areas. They're posted here for you. Number 1, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created. Number 2, whether the applicant has other feasible alternatives. Number 3, whether the variance is substantial. Number 4, whether an adverse impact on the environment will be created. Number 5, whether the alleged difficulty is self-created. The statute requires the board to balance the interests of the applicant and those in the neighborhood or community. The statute further requires that the board should grant the minimum variance shall deem necessary and adequate, and at the same time preserve and protect the character of the neighborhood and the health, safety, and welfare of the community. The board has the power to impose reasonable conditions for granting variances. Special exception applications are different than area variances. When we have a special exception application before us, I will explain the difference. Regarding procedure, cases will be called in order that they are advertised. When your case is called, please come forward, submit your affidavits and mailing receipt to Mr. Donadio, and then you will be sworn in at the podium. You will be given the opportunity to explain to the board why you need the variance. After the applicant is done speaking, all interested parties will be given one opportunity and only one opportunity to be heard. So please, organize your thoughts, keep your remarks factual that are related to the case. Then I will ask the applicant to come back to the podium to answer your concerns. The board will then close the case and reserve decision. After all the hearings are closed, the board will review the cases and decide some of them, and others will be reviewed at a later date. There are 3 ways to find out the results of the case. Number 1, you can wait until after the public hearing, but there's no guarantee that the board will act on your case tonight. Number 2, you can call the planning department tomorrow afternoon. And 3, applicants can wait and be notified by mail. I do have one adjournment for tonight. Okay. Case 16883, VEA 181 Realtor Corp., North Fork Management and Maintenance. That has been adjourned to June 25th. Mr. Tramarco, June 25th. Thank you. Okay. All right?
Ready?
Great.
The first case on the agenda tonight excuse me, is 16,927 Gregory and Marianne Kunkel, 22 Kim Avenue, Smithtown, New York, 11787. The location is the west side of Kim Avenue, 217 feet west of Tower Place, Smithtown. Property zoned R15. The request is a variance to permit environmentally sensitive land where the depth of the groundwater is less than 10 feet to be altered to reduce the minimum rear yard setback from 60 feet to 42 feet for a proposed 158 square foot addition and 65 square foot deck.
Okay. May I have the applicant, please?
And your name?
This is the applicant.
Okay.
Okay, Yes.
May I have your name, please?
My name is Gregory Kunkel, 22 Kim Avenue, Smithtown.
Okay, raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Would you like this lady to speak for you?
Yes, I do.
Okay, good. May I have your name, and could you spell your last name, please?
Christina Aiello, A-I-E-L-L-O, Morano Expediting,
And your address?
4 Hamilton Court, Quorum.
Okay. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay. You want to tell us why you're here, please?
Yes, we are here proposing a 12-foot by 13-foot sunroom addition and a 5-foot by 13-foot wood deck, holding a 42-foot rear yard setback instead of the required 60 feet. Okay, and the original house was built holding a 59-foot rear yard setback, so there is no way to meet the requirement as the house currently stands on the property. Behind them is vacant wooded area. It belongs to the town, the county. And so we don't feel it's going to be a detriment to the neighbors surrounding or to the rear. And it's a non-heated sunroom, and we haven't had any complaints from the neighbors or any concerns. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Planning?
Nothing, thank you.
Gentlemen,
No question. All right.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone here that would like to be heard on this application? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved. Second.
Regularly moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
The second case is 16-928, Peter Candela, 7 Attridge Drive, Kings Park, New York. Location, east side of Attridge Drive,
You're not the
338
applicant, are you?
338 feet north of Roundtree Drive, Kings Park. Property zoned R15. The request is a variance to increase the maximum square footage of a proposed detached garage from 750 to 840 square feet, to increase the maximum height of an accessory structure from 15 to 17 feet for a detached garage, to reduce the minimum side yard from 16 to 5 feet, and the total side yard from 34 to 21 feet, also for the detached garage, to reduce the side yard setback from 1 feet to 0 feet for paving, and to increase paving in the side yard from 25% to 51%.
Okay. Make sure you have that mic lifted up, please. Just lift it up. Thank you. May I have your name, please?
Peter Candela,
And your address, Peter?
7 Attridge Drive, Kings Park, New York.
Okay. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You want to tell us why you're here, please?
Okay. The reason I'm here is I'm proposing to build a detached garage at the end of my driveway, adjacent to the rear left corner of my house. And the variance requirements that I would have to change was I was asking for a height increase of from 15 feet to 17 feet. The reason I was asking for that request is due to my architect who designed the garage stated that based on the slope of the roof, to increase it 2 feet would increase the runoff of water and snow and not cause a problem in the future. In addition to that, the setback, the minimum side yard from 16 feet to 5 feet, the reason I was requesting that is the fact that my driveway is on the left side of my house. It runs up the left side of the property, and the most logical and location that I would be able to put the detached garage would be at the end of the driveway. The garage currently would be 10 feet set behind my house, so when you would come up my driveway, there would be 10 feet of the garage concealed behind the back of my house. And that's with the garage being placed at the 5 foot from the property line. If I were to go in further, I am somewhat flexible. I was 5 feet would be the minimum, or I should say the maximum that I would request, but I am somewhat flexible with that. As well as the height of the garage being 17 foot, I am somewhat flexible. 16 foot possibly would be acceptable with my architect's design that he gave me. And then the square footage of 750 square foot to 840 square foot, the reason I requested that was I currently have a shed and a one-car garage, and I have a collector car. It's a classic vehicle. I'm into the older cars and collector cars, and the square footage would permit me to have 2 vehicles in the garage with the doors open and also have storage on the sides of the vehicle without obstructing it. I'd be able to eliminate the shed that I currently have in my backyard and just have the one structure of the detached garage. The attic space would also be used in the garage for storage of items that I have in my house that I currently aren't able to store in a proper manner. My basement is only half of the house on the right-hand side of my house, so it's a rather small basement, and that would improve the storage abilities that I have. My attic currently is relatively inaccessible. There's a crawl space opening that is approximately 3 feet by 2 feet, almost just enough for me to be able to get into the attic, but no ability to actually get any type of boxes or any type of storage in there. So I'd be able to use the attic space in the garage for storage. And then the minimum side yard of 16 foot to 5 foot would be the placement of the garage at the end of the driveway. I would still have to veer slightly right to enter the garage, but that would eliminate the extreme turn into the garage by bringing it to 5 foot. And the paving request is from the 1 foot to 0 foot for paving. When I bought the house, the driveway was already done. It appears to be in there for quite some time, and apparently whoever put the driveway in, the Belgian blocks, veered slightly to the left, causing that setback to go from the 1 foot required to the 0 foot. When I repave the driveway, I would correct it to make it to the 1 foot straight up, but I guess currently as it stands, it is at 0 foot. That's why the setback requirement is in there. And then the paving from the 25% to 51% is due to the fact of having the additional driveway space of approximately 20 feet from the end of the driveway currently to the beginning of the new garage, and then also the cement for the foundation of the garage. I have surveilled the neighborhood there and looked in my vicinity to see who had a detached garage that would be similar to what I was proposing, and I came up with a few different examples of such. I have a map. I mapped out where they were, and I also took some photographs.
Are they labeled, the photographs?
The
of
photographs
addresses?
aren't labeled. I could label them if you'd.
They have to be labeled, what the address is, with your name, that you took the pictures and the date?
Okay.
Do you know if they have variances?
I know one that does, and he's a block away from me. I could present that picture. He's approximately 3 feet from his property line. I know he had to come for a variance as well, and he was successful in obtaining the variance. I'm not sure of the height on that structure, but I know it's within the 3 foot, so it's less than the property line that I'm requesting on the setback. I would also be willing to, for my neighbor to my left, to not cause a visual problem for my neighbors. I'd be willing to plant any type of bushes, shrubbery, or anything like that that would obstruct the view of the garage and perhaps enhance the line of sight for them. I also brought a picture of my parents in Huntington, had the same scenario. Their neighbor had a garage that was 2 feet from their fence line. They put in some Leland cypress. All you see is the Leland cypress, and you don't see the garage anymore, so it's not a visual concern for them.
Okay. Okay.
Also, the reason I'm asking for the garage to be the size it is my son's into older cars as well, and he's only 7 at this time, but he likes to, tinker with the vehicles. I'd like to restore a car with him in the future. He's asked me when we go to car shows to do something like that, and currently I have a 1-car garage that is unfortunately not large enough for me to store my car and also restore another vehicle. That's why I'm asking for a 2-car garage to go. The reason also I have a problem with getting my vehicle in and out of my garage, it takes me 7 maneuvers of my vehicle to actually back out of my garage into my driveway to be able to back out of my driveway. It's a 1970 Chevelle. The turning radius is not that of a modern vehicle. And it takes me 7 maneuvers to get the car straight to then come out of my garage currently. I actually hit the left corner of the garage once because it's a very tight turn in there. There's a fence with the entrance into the garage. So it's rather tight to get in there. To get in, it's 3 maneuvers for me to get into the garage. So having a garage straight up my driveway would be able to eliminate that hardship that I have.
Okay. All right. Planning,
No comments, thank you.
gentlemen?
Couple questions for you. Are you against switching? Right now you have it where the gables are on the sides, so you basically have the pitch face in the front.
Right. It's
Are you opposed to switching that?
by having the reverse gable, it maintains the visual accent of my house is a reverse gable as well. It's a ranch, and I would think it would be a uniform appearance. And then also from my neighbor to my left, their view would rather than be a 17-foot roof facing their backyard, it would actually just be the peak. So it would eliminate visual obstruction for their...
The only problem is that when you do that and you reduce the side yard is that the 17-foot is now basically right on the property line, as opposed to if you reverse it so that it's front to back, now 17 feet is basically 25 feet away from the property line.
I see what you mean.
That was one thing. And the other thing is, had you considered moving it further back in the yard? Because if you move it out of the building envelope, you don't need a variance other than the area variance.
Right. The reason I actually would have loved to, if my yard was perfectly flat, I would have done that. But there's trees and there's a bit of a hill in the back where I would not be able to build in that location, or if I did, it would probably require a large quantity of money and cement to make that come true.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, gentlemen?
No question.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone here that would like to be heard on this application? Come up, please. Let me, put that microphone down for yourself. Let me
Okay.
have your name and spell your last name.
My name is Brenda Yocca, Y-O-C-C-A. My husband is Nicholas Shocker. Since '83, we have lived at
Excuse me,
yes,
tell me your address.
5 Attridge Drive, Kings Park, New York.
Okay. Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, go ahead now.
Okay, Mr. Candela has been proposing to build a 17-foot high, 840 square foot 2-car garage, 5 feet from my side property line, and it will run almost entirely down my side property. We feel this huge structure will be an eyesore, impede on our privacy, quality of life, as well as decreasing the property value of our home, as well as the property value of the surrounding neighborhoods. We feel the heightened size of the structure represents an industrial-sized building in a residential neighborhood. Our concern, since the proposed garage is oversized, that Mr. Candelo has intentions of adding bays or lifts to the garage, possibly buying another car, and the noise and the activity will increase. Currently now, when he starts his car, we can't sit in the sunroom because of the noise and the vibration of the engine. We're concerned of environmental issues, carbon monoxide fumes. Will he have the correct ventilation system? Refurbishing a car uses other chemicals, paint, toxin. Will it cause environmental issues since it's right along my backyard? Another concern is of drainage. When it rains, will the water run onto my property? The height and structure of this proposed garage will interfere with the sunlight coming into my backyard, interfering with the enjoyment of my property and my sunroom. I have grown up in Kings Park. My family and friends live here. They're over constantly. My young nieces, ranging from 12 to 9, enjoy my pool. I'm expecting a new grandchild in July. My fear is the noise, possibly the fumes, or even the view from my property would impact the health or enjoyment of my family or guests. I worry about my husband and I's health since we both had cancer. The stress and anxiety already about this building being on the whole side of my property has caused us to be very upset. We worry about the fumes, future health problems, I don't know. We hope the board considers our concerns and reason for opposing this. We have worked very hard in maintaining our property, paying our taxes. It's a wonderful block to live on. My husband is currently retired, and I look to retire in the future. We look forward to enjoying our home, our backyard, with our grandchildren. This proposed garage would completely ruin our quality of life and our property values. And I also have to say, Mr. Ken Dello said concerning storage, I have the same house as his. It's a 60-foot long ranch, half of a basement. I have a finished basement. It has a den. When the kids were little, we had a toy room, and we have a washroom. The whole attic is for storage. So I feel that was an exaggeration. I just hope the board takes into consideration I have a quarter of an acre. He's got a half an acre. So he's taking up my whole side with this structure. And I hope you take into consideration what this is going to impact on us. And also the neighborhood. It doesn't belong there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else? May I
Hi,
have your name, please?
Tina Candela,
And your address, Tina?
7 Atridge Drive, Kings Park, New York.
Okay, raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. I understand the concerns of our neighbor, and my husband is very fair in planning our yard. They can't even see into our yard now the way it is because we have high shrubbery right now. As for the noise control, my husband has a muffler or whatever it is. It's not that noisy. He hardly ever drives it. We are not noisy neighbors. We are very nice neighbors. In fact, my husband was just
Okay.
over their house 2 days ago, well, last week, helping Nick with something. I mean, apparently I thought we all got along. I have young children. If it was, it would be a concern of mine too, the noise and the carbon monoxide. That is not a problem at all, ever. And if we do a garage, which we can do without a variance, it would be noisier for them because the way it would face their house and the noise control would and the smoke would go that way. The way he has it set up, the way he wants to do it, is going outwards, away from their house, not towards. So I just wanted to make light of that also.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
All right. May I have your name and will you spell your last name?
My name is Martin Huddy.
Spell your last name.
Last name is spelled Huddy.
All right, your address?
Is 12 Attridge Drive, Kings Park.
Okay, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. I'm a much longer-term resident than either of the two parties that spoke. The man who is seeking the variance, Pete, is a very good neighbor. These homes were built in 1964. We moved in as soon as the home was available for occupancy. this man, Pete, has maintained his property in excellent condition, and he seeks to utilize his property to its fullest extent. There are numerous homes in the neighborhood that have a detached garage been built. Right down the street from Mr. Candela is a home on Parkside Drive that has a detached garage, a double-car garage, and it is maintained in perfect condition, as will this one if it is accepted. And this does not detract from any of the neighbors' property value. It increases their property value, as will this garage if it is built. It will increase all our property values.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Okay. Ellen, you want to come back up? Yes. All right. Quickly, please. Comes to me.
I just wanted to further add that approximately 3.5 months ago, I did speak with Nick about building the garage. I asked him if he was opposed to it. He said no.
All right.
I then said, please, talk to your wife. If there's a problem, let me know. I didn't hear anything. I assumed everything was fine. Went forward with the plans, paid $1,400 for the permit applications. And I discussed with them approximately a week ago. They came over the house and they wanted to see what I wanted to build.
All right.
I told them that I am flexible with regards to the setbacks, that I could come back a little bit, I could bring the height down, I could do things. I'm flexible. Her response to me was nothing being built was
Okay.
acceptable for her.
All right. Are you putting any lifts in that garage?
At this point in time, no, I'm not planning on putting any lifts in the garage. I'm not opening a business. It's a detached garage that I would have for my personal recreational use, my hobbies.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved. Second?
Wrigley moved in second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried.
The next case is 16929, Gerard and Jeannie Leonard, 1 Elaine Court, Smithtown, New York. Location northwest corner of Elaine Court and Amsterdam Road, Smithtown. Property zoned R10. The request is a variance to reduce the minimum rear yard setback from 50 to 24 feet for a proposed 697 square foot carport.
May I have your name, please?
Gerard Leonard,
And your address, Gerard?
1 Elaine Court, Smithtown, New York.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Would you like this gentleman to speak for you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. I'm going to ask you to state your name, but spell your last name
Sure.
for the court stenographer. May I have your name, please?
John Costanza, Costanza.
Okay, and your address, please, John?
It's 278 Old Town Road,
Okay.
East Setauken.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. We're requesting a variance rear yard from 50 feet to 24 feet. It's a little confusing because it's a corner lot and it's not actually the rear yard. If you look at the survey, it's the side yard that goes up the side of a one-car garage existing. That is a driveway already, and we're just simply looking to put a roof line over it, a carport. I have photographs of the side yard, which is being called the rear yard. if it helps the board.
We have photos here.
Okay.
I believe these are the photos. Bill, are these the photos?
Oh, that's,
No, okay.
There are quite a few homes in the immediate area that do have carports that are original to the building of those homes. I also have photographs that are labeled with those addresses in the vicinity.
Planning,
No comments, thank you.
gentlemen? Okay. Is there anyone here that would like to be heard on this application? Hearing none, will entertain a motion to close the hearing.
so moved. Second?
Really moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next case is 16,930. Prisco Realty LLC, 927 West Jericho Turnpike, Smithtown, New York. Location, north side of Jericho Turnpike, 700 feet east of Morewood Drive, Smithtown. Property zoned WSI. The request, special exception to permit a trucking station, to waive special exception standard that requires adequate lot area and buffers, variance to reduce minimum front yard landscaping from 8% to 2%, to increase outdoor storage from 3 to 20 times the size of the building, to reduce setback of outdoor storage to a residence district from 50 to 10 feet, reduce outdoor storage and display setback of vehicles to front property line from 25 feet to 6 feet, to permit outdoor storage that is not on the same lot as the principal use, and to alter environmentally sensitive land, that is, where the depth of the groundwater is less than 10 feet.
At this time, Mr. Tramarko, I am going to recuse myself. All right, and I'll leave.
Also, Madam Chairwoman, just so the board's aware, I've worked with Mr. Tramarko and I've also represented Mr. Prisco, so I'm here for the purposes of the general Board of Zoning Appeals, but I won't
Sorry, we can't hear you. You need your mic.
Is this on? Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, I've worked with Mr. Tramarko and I've also represented Mr. Prisco, so just for purposes of the Board of Zoning Appeals, I'm here in case anything comes up as a general matter, but I won't be participating in any type of deliberation with the board on this. Okay? Thank you.
And I'll be acting chair during this one. Just in case anyone wants to know.
Okay. Acting Chairman, Mr. Tangi, members of the board, my name is Vincent Tramarko. I represent the applicant. I think probably the best way to handle it is to review the PAR, which was submitted to me, I believe, last Friday, and it's signed by Blaise Donadio. The special exception to permit a trucking station is based on the fact that the applicant rents space to Reliable Tree Service, who has a number of trucks and vehicles used in its tree cutting and pruning business. Now, looking at the first one, the variance to reduce the rear yard setback from a residence district from 50 to 10 feet, if you look at the tax map, and I believe you've been provided with a tax map, if you look at the applicant's property, right behind him at the boundary line is property owned by the town of Smithtown, and that appears to be a sump or a catch basin, not a catch basin, a sump or a drainage a configuration that's rather large, which separates my client's property from the street, Jennifer Road. So there is an automatic buffer of pretty much the whole width of the property, and at least 15 or 20 feet at its narrowest point to probably 70 or 80 feet at the apex. So we feel that the request to reduce the buffer, the minimum setback from 50 to 10 feet is not unreasonable considering how the property is located and configured at the site. If you look at Jennifer Road, it touches the other properties, almost touches on one side and touches on the other side, but not on our place. We have a substantial amount of town property in front of our rear yard. The variance to reduce the setback of outdoor storage from a residence district from 50 to 10 is the same reasoning. You can see again there's town property there, which is the catch basin sump, and that's never going to be changed. That will always be there. So there really is no reason to require a 50-foot setback. Now, the variance to reduce outdoor storage and display of vehicles to the front property line from 25 to 6. Well, if you're familiar with the premises, many years ago it was a filling station, and in those days they built the filling stations pretty close to Jericho Turnpike to start with, but more importantly, the state of New York, when it made its taking on that side, on the north side of Jericho, it drastically reduced the front yard setback of the building from its boundary line. So again, we feel that it's not an unreasonable request for the board to grant that variance. The variance to reduce the front yard landscape from 8 to 10%, again, this property, or a vast amount of this property, was taken by the state when they widened Jericho Turnpike, and that's the reason for 8% to 2%. And there really is no other way to do it, because if you didn't compress the property to 2% landscaping, we would have really no front yard at all between that building and the roadway. Variance to alter environmentally sensitive land depth to groundwater. Yes, in some spots there is groundwater less than 10 feet, so that's why we're asking for that variance. Variance to reduce the parking setback to side and rear lot lines from 6 to 0. Again, the reduction in the rear doesn't have any effect on neighbors, because again, they're all buffered by the sump, and on the sides there is WSI property on either side, on the east and west of the subject property, so we don't think that would have an adverse effect. The variance to increase outdoor storage from 3 times the size of a building to 20 times the size. Well, the building is rather small to start with. We are going to put a car dealership in there, used car dealership, and storage, like in any car dealership, is the most important factor in running that kind of business. The storage obviously will be benign. Cars will be parked and probably started up twice, once when they're brought in and once when they're taken out. So we don't think that would have an adverse effect on the neighborhood. The special exception standard to waive the requirement of adequate lot area, I'm not sure I understand that, but the recommendation is to approve with conditions, so I won't belabor that. Variance special exception to waive the requirement of adequate buffers. We talked about the buffers. It's really in the board's hands what they would like to grant us. And a variance special exception to waive the requirement of a 50-foot planting buffer to the residence district. My understanding is that sump in the back has been there for many, many years. It's been thickly vegetated over the years, so there really wouldn't be any reason to do any more buffering of the site. So we asked the board, again, it's recommended that you approve with conditions, and we ask that you do that. And finally, that's the one I don't have. The two conditions that well, condition number one, revise the site plan to the site plan recommended by the planning department. Some of them we agree with, some of them we don't. We did meet, just so the board is aware, with Peter Hans well prior to us presenting this application, and the site plan that you have before you, not the planning department's, but the one we submitted, was submitted with all of the input from Peter Hans. I think he's a senior planner in the department. And the second condition we don't agree with. The existing repair garage will only be used for the maintenance and repair of tree service vehicles, while the car dealership may want to do repairs only on their cars, not to be open to the public. Well, it doesn't matter. A car dealership is entitled to a repair garage, provided it's 49% and no more of the building, and that's what we will comply with. We also will obtain, or our tenant will obtain, all the appropriate approvals from the state for a repair facility as well as a sales facility of motor vehicles. So we ask the board for its favorable consideration. We don't think it will have an adverse effect on the character of the area. The character of the area is WSI zoning. On both sides of the properties, of our property, they happen to be vacant. So that's one of the reasons why I really don't understand why we're worried about giving more of a buffer to the side to people or owners that are not even there to start with, and we're happy with the statutory buffer on the side yards. Whether the applicant can achieve this by some other method, I guess you could cut everything down, but it would make it very difficult to do the things that he wants to do there, or it wants to do there, and yet at the same time create an environment that's probably the most benign use that this property can be put to. Whether it's substantial, we don't think it's substantial. We did meet with planning, as I said, and came up with this site plan after many meetings and revisions of the plan that you have before you. Was the difficulty self-created? No, we really haven't put everything into force, although there has been car storage there, and Reliable Tree stores their trucks on the property, and we haven't heard of any situations where neighbors were disturbed by the storing of vehicles there. So we ask the board for its favorable consideration. I have Frank and Dawn Prisco here, the owners of the property, if you have any questions. And that's my presentation.
One thing I have, it may be procedural. I just wanted to check with the town attorney on this. I noticed that you had brought up the reduction of the parking setback from 6 to 0. I don't see that in the advertisement. Where on here? I don't see on the plan where we go from 6 feet to 0.
I don't know why it's in the PAR either.
It's in the PAR. I don't see it in the advertisement. I don't see it on the plan unless somebody can.
We're good with the 6. We're fine with the 6 feet.
There's some confusion on my part, too. I believe the plan that you submitted shows 6 feet?
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's fine.
Okay, and then one of the other things is why the 12-foot distance between the two, what I'm guessing is sea containers in the back?
I'm sorry, I can't hear
I
you.
see structure 1 and structure 2 on the site plan. Are those, there's a 12-foot distance between the two structures. Is that necessary?
No, I don't believe it is.
Is there a town ordinance that requires them to have 12 feet? Because I'm thinking if you move them closer together, if you were saying that the buffer behind that recharge basin goes from 17 to 70 or 80 feet?
Approximately. There's a whole recharge basin behind my client's property. It happens to be zoned residential. And one of the requests is to waive the 50-foot buffer requirement because
Right.
there's no need for it.
Well, basically what I was thinking is if you can move that one, I guess, what's structure number 1, 6 feet closer to structure number 2, you're not showing a parking space on the other side. I don't believe you are. You can basically have that 50, if you take the recharge basin and consider it as a buffer, by moving that, you're basically going to have 50 feet to what's actually residence.
We don't have to put the containers there at all.
I'm just thinking in terms of the site plan. If we basically just increase your buffer, which you have at 10 feet, to somewhere around 15 feet or 16 feet, if you add 17 feet, which is the recharge basin at the corners, you basically have your 50 feet.
Okay. My client just said, okay, good suggestion.
And then I guess planning, we have a planning advisory report. You want to
Yes.
go over?
If I could explain a little bit, please. The advisory report was prepared about a week ago, a little less, it was finished a little less than a week ago. And it was based on the information that we knew of at that time. We didn't understand that the applicant wanted to have a car dealership on site until Friday. We knew that they were storing cars for a dealership, and perhaps incorrectly, it was our understanding that it was for an off-site dealership. The fact that it's really on-site, I think, is actually better for the town. It's just that when you're reviewing something for compliance with regulations and for what might be called good planning, if you have like one notion in mind that it's off-site storage, you think of certain requirements, and if you think of it as on-site storage, there are different requirements. So if we had known a week ago what we know today, this would be, our recommendation would be slightly different. But the bottom line, I think, is still the same, and that is that both uses are, in essence, permitted in WSI. The concern is not with having a car dealership and a trucking station on the same property, even though it's two uses on one property, as long as it's designed so that it can fit both uses. I think the only two concerns that would be of the board's is one is that the repair garage is a repair garage for the motor vehicle showroom and not a body shop, not a place where they have a towing yard and stuff like that, where the spray painting, the fumes, the banging, and all that stuff that goes with body shops would come in. The second thing is, in our report to you, we have a recommended plan, and the plan doesn't show 3 concrete storage bins that are depicted on the plan submitted with the application. And the reason that we were recommending that they not be permitted is because there are requirements that anything that's capable of producing odors has to be stored in waterproof containers. And these are what I think are typical concrete bins that are concrete on 3 sides and open on one side for payloaders or whatever to scoop things in and out, and then normally open on the top so they can pile stuff higher than the bin itself. There are a few around town. Since the storage of that sort of stuff is prohibited except in enclosed containers, we didn't think that it was an accessory use to the trucking station, and it's not an accessory use to the motor vehicle showroom. So we were recommending against it. Apparently, Mr. Tremarco spoke with Peter Hans yesterday in the planning department, and I think Mr. Donadio, and asked if they put tarps over the top, would that constitute a waterproof container? And I believe they agreed to disagree and leave it in the board's hands as to whether that's a waterproof container. We would say that we would not call it a waterproof container because we think that the odors would escape. But if there's a way to keep odors within there, that would answer one question. The second question is whether or not the storage of what I presume would be wood chips, leaves, mulch, brush, things like that, whether that's an accessory use to a trucking station. I don't think it really is. So, you know, our recommendation is that this be for the storage of the tree company, for the storage of trucks for the tree company, and the storage of whatever cars fit for the motor vehicle showroom, plus buildings, plus adequate parking, plus adequate buffers. We made the best recommendation we could with the information we had. I think the board should weigh what we recommended and the information you hear tonight.
Question for you on those, I guess they're material bins?
Yeah, the material stored there would be firewood, sand or gravel, because Reliable Tree sometimes has to fix a sidewalk when they take out a tree. And the third material would be topsoil, none of which, to my knowledge, has any type of odor to it. We certainly are not going to be storing wood chips or mulch.
Do any of those three meet the definition of materials that can cause an odor, according to town code?
I don't know if there's a definition of town code. I mean, sure, everybody's smelled chopped wood before. Whether it's objectionable, I don't know.
Well, my question is, if it's determined that they need to be in a waterproof container, does a shed roof over those 3 block walls kick off any additional variances?
Give me a couple of minutes to try to figure that out.
And if
please.
they don't, would the applicant be okay with putting a shed roof over it instead of tarp so that it's compliant with?
Yes. I just wanted to comment on, there will be no, as a condition of your approval, if you so decide, you can make it, there'll be no body shop type work being done there. That's not, has never been our intention.
Sure. The reason I bring it up is the town, you know, the planning department deals with the property and not the owner, because a lot of times owners come in good faith, and if the town takes it upon that, and then the owner flips the property to someone else and says, like, I never promised I wouldn't do a body shop, you know, that's why we bring these things up.
Right, well, you can make it a condition
Sure.
if you so desire.
Okay, and the last question I have, you had mentioned that permit outdoor storage is not on the same lot as the principal use. If that's not the case,
That's
do we
not the
deny
case
without
anymore.
prejudice?
Right. My understanding is the outdoor storage of cars is the use on the property. It will be a motor vehicle
Yes,
sales establishment.
yes,
Okay, so that one we would deny without prejudice regardless because you don't need it.
that's correct.
Okay. Gentlemen, anything? It's my understanding we may have a little bit of interest in this case. For the sake of keeping the record clear, if we could limit any comments to just the area variance considerations, because on a special exception, this board, if they meet all the criteria, we have to approve it. If they don't meet the criteria, we have to deny it. They're permitted to ask for variances, and if you could limit any comments to those variances that they're asking for and how they relate to the 5 considerations, that's all we're allowed to look at. And also, for the sake of Rick going home with his fingers not aching this evening, if somebody has said the same thing, just say you agree and don't reiterate what's already been said on the record. And with that, would anyone like to be heard on this application? If you want to be heard, just kind of make a line up at the microphone. Can you state your name, spell your last name, and your address, please?
Linda Jablonski, 39 Amsterdam Road, Jablonsky.
Could you raise your right hand, please? You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay.
2003, Frank Prisco purchased
Just pull the
926.
mic down so that...
Sorry. In 2003, Mr. Prisco purchased this property. He immediately tore a buffer down and removed trees, which eliminated a buffer that we had between us and the traffic on Jericho Turnpike. He also began grinding, dyeing, and storing mulch on the property, all of which the property is not zoned for. Several neighbors contacted the town. He received several summonses, a cease and desist order, a temporary restraining order. This stopped the bulk of the illegal work. We came to the town, and you really did help us. We really, for 10 years, Mr. Prisco has tried to get a site plan approved, and he has not been able to. Unfortunately, this plan he has submitted is the most aggressive of any plan that he has submitted to date. These changes would have a dramatic impact on the health, safety, and quality of life for the residents of Amsterdam and Jennifer Roads. These are neighborhoods with young families and children. There are significant air, water, soil, and noise pollution issues that these changes would bring. We come to the Board of Zoning Appeals to help us with this urgent issue. What we would like is time to perform an independent impact study. We are asking the town for a comprehensive plan that will mitigate the noise, visual impact, and pollution this proposed change would cause before this project is able to move forward. We would say no to his permit for a trucking station, no to his variance for special exemption standard that requires adequate lot areas and buffers, no to his variance for increased outdoor storage from 3 times to 20 times, no to his variance to reduce setback of outdoor storage to resident districts from 50 feet to 10 feet, no to his variance to permit outdoor storage that is not on the same lot as the principal use, no to his variance to permit environmentally sensitive land to be altered, depth to groundwater less than 10 feet. We would like the buffer restored and trees planted to restore the property to its previous condition as close as is realistically possible. We do not want mulch grinded, dyed, or stored on this property. It is too close to a residential neighborhood and directly in front of a school bus stop, and is in violation of town codes. We understand that we live behind Jericho Turnpike and that there will be businesses. We just want all businesses to follow town codes and practice proper environmental controls. What business is he operating at this location? Is it a tree service company, a used car dealership, or a trucking station? What is he planning to sell at this location in the proposed showroom? What is he planning to store in the concrete containers bins he wants placed in the back of the property? Does anyone else own this property with Mr. Prisco? Is Mr. Prisco planning to sell this property if the zoning change is approved? Who are the customers for this proposed trucking station? What will the hours be? How many trucks does he plan to have on the property at any one time? Will the property continue to be zoned WSI? Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have your name and address, please,
Arthur Most, 33 Amsterdam Road,
and spell your last name.
MOST.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Good evening. I'm here specifically, I agree, obviously, with most of the people who are going to be speaking here tonight. I'm going to speak specifically about the buffer zone in the rear of the property. As I think the attorney had spoken, 3 sides of it, one side's road, 2 sides are woods. The back of it does butt up directly with a residential neighborhood. The attorney spoke about a buffer zone, that's a natural sump. And he failed to mention a couple things about the buffer zone. It's almost triangular in nature. So there's 2 points on the side where it's maybe 10 feet deep, and then it hits the commercial property. So from the road, I'm about 10 feet from the property line of the business. And okay. And the issue is I'm one of the houses that's closely on. So when I pull out of my driveway, if I kept going straight, I would drive into the sump, and then the property that we're discussing. The issue again is that at the sides it's very narrow. So while it is deeper in the middle and does create a little bit of a buffer zone, the issue at hand is that it's weeds. So in the wintertime, the weeds die. When the weeds die, you see everything directly through to Jericho Turnpike. The reason why you see everything directly through to Jericho Turnpike is there is no buffer zone on the property. I moved in 5 years ago. I moved in the spring, so obviously there was some weeds there, so I didn't see exactly what was going on the subject property. Through the last 5 years, that buffer zone, which was reduced, is now nothing. The subject property, they use the property up until the property line of the sump. So there is no, I would think you'd have to remeasure to see how much buffer zone there is, but I'm betting it's under 10 feet of property to the buffer zone. I do have some pictures. I labeled them, so I will hand them to you just so you can understand what I see and give a little bit of a visual. So again, the issue has been the constant degradation of the buffer zone. So if not for the town property, it would be right on the property line. That's probably the best way of explaining it. So the issue becomes multiple from the lack of a buffer zone. At the two pinch points during the summer, and especially in the winter, when you go around the corner, the reflection of about 40 windshields, when the light hits correctly, almost blinds you going around the corner. And obviously it's a little bit of a distraction, and quite frankly, a very terrible eyesore. When people come down and visit me, they're like, "Where do you live?" So that was something that we haven't complained about, because we said, you know what, let's not make this a major issue. Let's not push. It's not directly impacting us, but it's been getting continuously worse. More cars that sit there in the mud, in the dirt, in the weeds, that, it's not very attractive. The other thing to keep in mind that was not mentioned is that the property is on a degrade. It's a decline. So even though there might be a few feet of buffer zone with the sound sump, we're elevated about 10 to 15 feet above that area. So you see right over the weeds, there's no trees there. So from the top of my property, from my windows, I can see directly into this commercial real estate. When I first purchased the house, there were no cars there. Now there are cars there. And I don't even want to think about resale value, but that's a separate issue. Just to get back on point, the other thing is I'm woken up very early in the morning, between 7 and 7:30 quite often, with the sound of heavy machinery, whether it be forklifts or dumpers dumping mulch and other dirt into dump trucks in the very rear of the property on the buffer line zone. That, quite frankly, if I walk down there, I could almost, I'm 10 feet from them. I see them when I bring my garbage pails in the morning. I'm just checking through my notes to see if there's anything I missed. My concern ultimately is that there's been no respect for the buffer zone at 50 feet. I'm scared at what the effect is going to be when if the buffer zone is reduced to 10 feet. I'm scared because at some point it seems to be a consistent infringement upon potentially even town property. So I'm concerned. I'm a very concerned person. In addition, one thing, there is mulch on the property. So I don't know if they're dyeing it, but there is mulch, and again, it's in my photographs. All right, and I mean, that's really, what I have to say. So if it's okay if I walk over and just drop over.
You label them with your name and the application on it? Okay, thank you.
Can one go into the file?
These will all go in the file.
Okay.
Thank you.
Should I give an extra copy?
Nope, this is going to go right in the file. Next. Your name and address, please.
Brian Fleischman, Fleischmann, address 35 Amsterdam Road,
Can you raise
Smithtown.
your right hand, please?
I'm sorry?
Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. We as a neighborhood have many interests regarding Mr. Prisco's property, but I will only focus on one relevant issue, which is the environmental aspect. Prior to moving into my residence in 2003, I observed a service station with numerous abandoned vehicles in the rear of this location. Our concern is that the practice of leaving discarded vehicles could have been going on for years. We are worried that these vehicles could have been leaking fluids and gas into the ground, which could have caused contamination to the soil. Another issue on the same note is Mr. Prisco has been disposing of mulch on a regular basis over the last 10 years in the rear of his property. I have a picture from yesterday with mulch piles from the rear of the 927 West Jericho. So,
If you want to submit it, you just have
yes,
to
I'm gonna
label with
submit
your
it.
name, when it was taken, and the
Sure.
case number.
In addition, Mr. Prisco had an approximately a 20 to 30 foot mulch pile in the same area in the year 2003. Just this past Saturday, at approximately 7:50 a.m., I observed two of his employees dumping mulch out of the rear of one of his trucks. I researched the chemicals that are in mulch, and there's quite a few. For example, arsenic, methanol, acetic acid, and ammonia. The list goes on. We would like to have the appropriate agency, such as the EPA or DEC, conduct tests on this property to test for possible contamination to the soil. We would like these tests conducted prior to any variances or permits issued to Mr. Prisco. This also raises another issue, which is the water table level. My understanding that the water table on this property is only at 7 feet, which has been confirmed by the town planning board. We are under the assumption that the town code is 10 feet. We are worried that this could affect the groundwater and adjacent sump. In closing, we would like to ask the question of how Mr. Prisco could be granted permits to make adjustments to this property with all these environmental issues.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next. State your name and address, please.
Keith Andrews, 49 Amsterdam Road, Smithtown.
Could you raise your right hand? You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. I live directly across from the proposed variance, and I wanted to confirm exactly what my neighbor at 33 Amsterdam was saying, Arthur Most, because the lawyer for the applicant noted that he said that the sump is thickly vegetated, but that is clearly not the case because most of the vegetation is low to the ground, and it does not provide an adequate buffer, in my opinion, and also in the opinions of my fellow neighbors. I moved to this neighborhood in 2002, and in 2003, the buffer was drastically reduced by taking some of the trees down, and it seems like over the years it has gotten much worse, as my fellow neighbor noted. I also have 3 children. I have a 12-year-old boy. I have twins that are 9. My neighbor Arthur also has 2 children the same age. My neighbor to the other side of me, to the left of me, at number 51, has a toddler and expecting another child in July. And the reason why I bring this up is because kids, they like to ride bikes in my neighborhood. And we live on a long sweeping curve right there where the property is. The property is right on that curve. So when the kids are riding bikes, it's hard for them to even hear a car coming in the first place. And I'm thinking that with the increased activity of the vehicles in this neighborhood, it's going to make it even more difficult for the kids to differentiate between whether there's a car coming or whether it's a vehicle that's in the property that's being used. So that's definitely a major concern that I have because it is a dangerous curve as it is, and adding to the noise in the neighborhood I think would cause a danger to the children in that way. And as far as the storage bins that were proposed, the concrete bins with just a shed roof, I really don't think that that it's going to prevent any kind of odor whatsoever, because you still, even if you put a roof on and you have 3 sides covered, you still have the whole front that's open. So, I mean, any odors that are gonna come out are gonna come out, whether it's got a roof on it or not. So, so that also is going to affect the quality of life. And also, as my fellow neighbor noted, in the wintertime, it is bare as can be. We can't, you know, you can see everything. You can, like, when I'm driving down Jericho, I turn around and there's my house. It's just right there, and there is absolutely no buffer whatsoever. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Next. Can you state your name and address, please?
My name is Scott McCaig, M-C-C-A-I-G, and I live at 47 Amsterdam Road.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I live right next door to Mr. Andrews, who just spoke. Unlike the other residents in attendance tonight, I have only lived in the neighborhood a year. I bought my house in 2012, and the well-kept homes and the safety afforded by the cul-de-sac were two of the features that attracted me to the area. Over the past year, we became increasingly aware of the noise coming from the constant streams of trucks going in and out of the facility. During the winter months, when the foliage dies off from the surrounding trees, mounds of mulch, tree service debris, and rows of used cars that are stored on unpaved areas are clearly visible. We are concerned that the drastic expansion of the business, including increased and expanded storage, will lead to the pollution of the air, water, and ground in the surrounding areas. Many of the families in the area have young children, and their safety must take precedent. When I showed the public hearing notice to some of my neighbors, I was shocked to learn that there have been unresolved zoning issues with this applicant going back to 2003. It would seem that prior violations should be resolved before new, more lenient exceptions should be considered. While none of the residents in attendance tonight are opposed to the applicant conducting a business on his premises, we feel a business should be consistent with the others in the area, for example, retail and light commercial, and that there should be a distinct separation between commercial and residential occupancies. This could be achieved by way of a green belt or sound barriers such as those installed along the Long Island Expressway. The health and personal safety of all homeowners should take priority over business expansion and should be fully evaluated prior to any approvals being granted. In addition to the environmental concerns previously noted, I fear that the approval of these variances, in addition to ruining the character of the neighborhood, would lead to a deterioration in the market value of all the homes in the area. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Have your name and address, please.
Dean Salerno, 37 Amsterdam Road.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All yours.
We feel that these changes are overly ambiguous and would significantly change our neighborhood. This is because these board requests include a truck station, exceptions to lot buffers, including frontage, outdoor storage areas, and a reduction of setbacks to the residential district. Outdoor storage not the same as principal use. Who really knows what this could become? Alterations to environmental sensitive land because of the high water table. This high water table, we're told, is the reason the planned Wendy's restaurant on Route 25 never opened, creating an ongoing eyesore. While we don't generally oppose business people's expansions, we do not agree with such an extensive list of proposed changes. His desire to better himself should not come at the expense of his neighbors, who may see their own property values decline because they are subjected to added noise, undue congestion, and possible environmental damage. Perhaps this parcel no longer suits the needs of his rapidly expanding business. We suggest that he finds another piece of property that will be better match his needs. Bottom line is, his expansion should not come at the expense of ours. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure. Names on it? Your name and the case number on it? If you could just label it and then bring it back up, we'll put it in the file.
Todd Jablonski, 39 Amsterdam Road.
Okay, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I agree with everything that my neighbor said. I think there's many neighbors here who also didn't speak. And I guess I would ask the planning board to consider some of the outstanding questions. Mr. Prisco, does he have any outstanding court dates? Does he have any outstanding court fines? Does he have any outstanding
environmental
We
issues.
really can't consider things that aren't directly related to the variance.
Well, I guess it relates to the fact that he has not had approval for a site plan over the last 10 years, and we'd like to know how he's been able to operate a business without a site plan approval. And I guess the general question would be is, basically the town has not been able to control Mr. Prisco. He's had violations, and how would give somebody like that more liberal zoning policy enable him to, how would you be able to control him at that point?
Well, once we approve the application, this is what has to be built. This is basically
Mhm.
the end of the line for somebody who's trying to comply with the ordinance.
Okay.
Thank you. Next. Name and address, please.
Glenn Romanelli, 52 Amsterdam Road.
Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I want to bring up a point. I agree with all of my neighbors on the points that they have made. Where I live at 52 Amsterdam Road, the property is pretty elevated. There are some businesses behind my house and my neighbor's house that are set down a very far way. So there's a very natural buffer zone of height and of the foliage that is there, so that even in the wintertime, when there's no foliage on the trees, you can't really see anybody operating businesses. It's not an impact, and because of that very sort of deep berm that leads up to our properties, you don't really notice any of the noise. The sump is the beginning of a downgrade of the land, and as my neighbors, Mr. Most has discussed, on Jennifer Road, the property is exactly level with Mr. Prisco's property, which is very different from some of the other businesses. And because of the way it's catty-cornered on the sump, it's extremely close to Jennifer Road. And so, as they had stated, in the wintertime, it's literally having a commercial property right in your front yard. I mean, there's no buffer zone of any kind. The fact that they're asking to even have it reduced more is extremely disconcerting. Again, I'm not against him operating a business or making a living, but there absolutely needs to be more trees planted, potentially some sort of a wall like they do have on the LIE to sort of buffer it out a bit. It's literally right next to the property, so it's an extremely different situation than other businesses in the area. So I agree with my neighbors, and I feel that this variance should be declined. Thank you.
Have your name and address, please.
My name is Craig Brunges, 50 Amsterdam Road, Smithtown.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. I live at 50 Amsterdam Road, which is the property which is next to me is vacant, and then Mr. Pristo's storage area, which I call it, is next to me. Where I live, my house is very high, okay? McDonald's is right behind my property, okay? I worked out a deal with McDonald's where they put trees up in the back of my property as a buffer zone. Where I sit on my deck, I look at a used car lot, okay? At nighttime, I see blinking lights, car alarms going off. I had Mr. Pristo at my house to take down a tree, and I asked him about the cars in the back, and he says that he was renting out the property to a person, you know. Then we find out that he wants to open up a used car lot. Now, how many cars are going to be on this? I mean, is it going to have a showroom? Or are people just going to congregate and walk around the back where all these cars are going to be? You know, I didn't buy my house to look at a used car lot. And with that, I'll end.
Thank you.
Good evening. Tim McLaughlin, 5 Jennifer Road, Smithtown, New York.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I agree with most of my neighbors. The primary concern I have with the piece of property right now is, A, the cars that are being stored on there. We didn't realize initially that these were cars that were being resold, but the grade of the property in the rear of the building that the cars are sitting on is not paved. It seems to be consisted of mulch that's been there since 2003, when this original mulch pile, 40 or so feet high in the air, most of it was removed. The rest of it appears to have been bulldozed. But since that time, mulch is continually added to the grade in the back. It's bulldozed So the original grade that was Jericho level is now probably at least 4 or 5 feet higher than it originally was. There was mention of the sump being used as a buffer. I think some people did touch on the fact that most of that property has been bulldozed right up to the sump. And the other concern I have would be with all the bulldozing, extra material that's now back there, that wasn't there when the sump was built, what the integrity of the sump is at the moment, and will it still function as it's designed to. So again, I agree with everything my neighbors have said, and I just had concerns about the grade that's there now and why it's been allowed to get as high as it's been. Because at some point, it's going to be at the same level as the corner of Jericho and Jennifer Road.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
That's it, thanks. Anyone else wish to be heard? You were up for a different application?
Yes,
Okay.
but I live right
Yeah.
on the block.
I think he's already been sworn in. You have his
Yes.
name, you just give your name and address so he can.
Gerard Leonard, 1 Elaine Court, Smithtown, New York. I live right off of Amsterdam, the next court. And there's not much I can say to further what everyone else said, but I just wanted to say I totally agree with all my neighbors. I walk past that Jennifer Court every day, and I fully agree with everything that was said today and protest to decline the variance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to be heard on this application? Mr. Schmarko? I think I tried to write down a couple of questions, unless you wrote them down.
Okay.
First and foremost, which seems to be a concern among everyone, is will there be storage of mulch on site?
No.
Okay. Hours of operation, do you know what they're going to be?
6, 7 a.m. Let's just say 6:30 to 7 o'clock at night.
Monday to Friday?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Days a week?
Monday to Friday?
Monday to Friday, 7 days a week?
Monday through Friday, generally, occasional Saturday, obviously no Sunday.
One of the other questions, how many cars? Do you know how many cars they're going to be storing on site?
About 50 cars.
Okay. One of the questions, it seemed to be the general consensus that recharge basin doesn't provide much of a buffer because it's not very densely planted. One of the conditions that at least I'm thinking, I don't know how the rest of the board is thinking it, is that we may require whatever buffer we ask for in the back be planted to kind of enhance that buffer that exists right now.
We wouldn't have a problem doing that.
And one of the things, we don't have a seeker on this one. Because the bins don't comply if you're going to store certain things in them, are you okay with us leaving the case open until the next meeting, just in case that kicks off an additional variance?
I'm sorry, if we leave the case open,
We leave the case open if the fact that, say we're going to put shed roofs over those bins in the back to make them comply with the ordinance, if it kicks off a variance, rather than have you open up a new application, if we keep it open, we would just close it if it doesn't at the next meeting, and then we could act on it.
going to have them, the planning department check?
Exactly.
Well, that's
Exactly.
fine.
And possibly, maybe just redraw it showing the 16 or 17-foot buffer planted and eliminating structure number 1 so that you have a chance to look at it, the board has a chance to look at it.
That's fine.
And address some of the concerns that the neighbors had. Does that make sense, Dave? Dave?
Sorry?
Does that make sense?
What, to hold it open?
Hold it open until the next meeting?
In all honesty, I'm not sure. Because let's just say if the board approved what's before you and the building department, who's the final say on this, says that that's not permitted, you didn't actually approve it. You know, they
No,
could-
just, we don't
But
have
if
a
you want the
secret.
ability
There's no
to
secret.
approve it, Yeah.
We have no secret, so if we
Sure.
leave it open, check with building, get back to us by the next hearing, and then we
Okay.
can actually look at what we're doing, and the applicant will have a chance to look at it, and any of the neighbors can go into the planning department and see what the changes are.
So, but the purpose of keeping it open is to determine whether or not it's permitted?
Whether putting shed roofs over those structures is going to kick off additional variances.
Right.
And seeing what increasing that buffer and removing structure number one and locking up a proposed planting plan to
Right.
create a buffer between the new setback and the recharge basin.
And what's the new setback, though? Just by reducing
I don't know what
the-
the board, I was thinking if we moved that structure and then added, say we made it 16 feet instead of 10, and you've got 17 to 20 in the smaller areas of the
Right.
recharge basin, you're essentially the 50 feet that everyone else complies with.
Right. I didn't follow it all, but I got the gist of it, I think. But what would, I mean, that I don't think is that much of an issue to hold a hearing open. But the other part, I guess, is whether or not, let's just say, putting a roof on the bins doesn't comply with something. That's the question, right?
Essentially, yeah.
If it doesn't comply with something in the zoning ordinance, then the question is if the applicant wants to continue with that.
Or eliminate them.
Well, okay, but if they wanted to continue, then new notice would have to be provided, and the hearing continued after notice.
And there wouldn't be enough time if that was the case if we gave them the next meeting?
Well, no, I mean, we'd have to figure that out tonight.
So we'll hold it open till or I'll ask the chairperson if she can put it on for the meeting after that in case it does.
We don't have enough time for the next meeting.
So I'll ask her to put it on for the meeting after the next one, and if it
That's fine.
doesn't kick off any new variances, then we'll just adjourn it,
Okay.
or close it at that meeting.
I'd just like to make a couple of comments, and I know that people that live on Amsterdam and Jennifer are concerned about their quality of life, and they should be. And one of the questions was, did Prisco Realty take care of all the prior violations? We did. We were in court. They were resolved. So there's no pending violations against the landowner. By making this application, we want to legalize the uses that are there. I certainly don't mean this in any way as a threat, but there are many, many WSI uses that we could do as of right, which are far more noxious, if you will, than the benign use of driving cars and parking them and then selling them. And there won't be people walking all around the property. They would bring a car out in front, and there is going to be a showroom, and that's where the business will be done. And we also understand that people are higher, much higher than our property. We're not responsible for the way that, the property is laid out and where the residence property is. But we do understand their requests to have buffers, and we don't have a problem with plantings. I don't think a wall would be conducive to anything, and we're not going to be putting up an expressway wall. We wouldn't even be allowed to do that, but we certainly can plant fast-growing trees in that whole area, and we would be happy to do so. Finally, when Mr. Prisco and his company bought this property, there was a Phase 1 and a Phase 2 environmental because the prior owner apparently did bury a lot of stuff there, and we had to deal with that in removing it and getting a clear environmental report, which was done. So again, we asked the board, we know you're adjourning the matter, and if the people have any questions after this hearing, we try and answer them as best we can. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this hearing to June 9th,
I'll make a motion.
July
Second.
9th?
or July 9th, sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion adjourned. Somebody want to get Adrian back in here, Joe, so I can give her her job back? Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, if you can put your name and the case number. I can put the case number if you don't have it.
Time. Donnie. Rick. 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 Time.
Thank you.